So, all right, sorry, leave it. Okay.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Sunday afternoon People Talk with Paul Lawrence. And first of all, let me apologize for the 4 minutes late. It took a while for everybody to get connected, but we're here now. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about today's guest and the range of topics that we can cover. Before I introduce my guest or ask them rather to introduce themselves, you know, one of my friends, Tony Harrison, put up on the Facebook page, he said to me, Paul, what topic are you going to cover today? In the past, I've always put up the name of the topic or what I'm gonna cover, but not today. And the reason why I haven't done it today is because I started the week absolutely certain of what I was gonna cover. And I'm sure some of the people who are my guests will back me up. I had absolute clarity as to what I was gonna cover. And you know, we'll certainly still cover those items. But boy, what a week. What a week we have had, not just here in the UK, but certainly internationally as well. As a people, we have had one hell of a week, I think it's fair to say. I'm going to call him Brother Toyin. I'm not big on saying the brother thing, but Toyin is a brother to our community, and he put out a video earlier in the week which cannot be ignored, and I'm sure I'll ask him to say a couple of words about that, because actually the core of his video was related to the original topic that we had about the disproportionate effect of COVID on the Black community. But then Atlanta, Georgia, I think happened. I think that's where the brother was from. He was jogging, as you do, apparently, you know, get your exercise during lockdown, and he was gunned down. Now, I try not to put any fluff on things. It is, he was gunned down. Yeah. And there is no way for us to style it. That is what he was done. I understand that the two hunters, that's what I'm going to call them, have been arrested because it's a hunt game for them. That's what it is for them. They're hunting. So that's that. And I thought, okay, yeah, we can go for that. You know, I know the people are going to be on the call. We can do that for 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours. And then Manchester happened. And, you know, I'm not naive. You know, I've been around the block. I've seen a couple of things. You know, we all from the days we've seen all the things that we've seen on video, we've heard. But I got to tell you, the one in Manchester hit me on a different level. And I don't know about you, but if you've not seen the video, that's cool. But if you have seen the video, I challenge you to tell me that your eyes weren't focused on that little boy. I challenge any of you. You can come with all of your rhetoric and you can talk about what the dad may or may not have been doing. But for the entire length of that video, my eyes were transfixed on that little boy. And I can't tell you that I had expected for the possible topics to change. But here's the thing about having some sort of faith or optimism. It just so happens that the people who are on this call are exactly the people that I would have wanted to talk about any of those three topics on any given day. And so let me apologize now for anybody who thinks this might last an hour. I'm not putting an hour cap on this. Yep. My guests have been booked for an hour, and I will never hold it against any of them if they feel to go after the hour, because obviously they have other responsibilities and bits and pieces. But today, if people want to stay and chat and talk and, you know, just shoot the breeze, that's what we're going to do today. Yep. Fortunately, they don't yet control this program. Yep. We still have full control. Every time I start the program, I always say, you know, I try not to be political. Yeah, I guess this week that's kind of dead. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask my guest in the order that they connected to introduce themselves. And so the honor goes first to Dean. Dean was the first to connect. Introduce yourself to our listeners, please.
Good afternoon, Dean Okai, the founder of ADPAC, which is a socio-political organization, which is an umbrella, which is really just to centrally connect what we do, signpost all of our community resources, and also work on a strategic level, at an institutional strategic level, with other international organizations, and centrally to bring our own currency to fruition so that we have economic security within our community rather than being reliant on a pound, which might be at the mercy of money manipulators and definitely held back from us like we are now in lockdown, not earning any money.
Thank you. Asari.
Good afternoon, everyone. Most people probably in the community know me as a Pan-Africanist for a bit too long to mention for some people, but over 30 years. Started in trade unionism. That might be relevant later. I'll tell you why later. And more recently, in the last 9 years or so, I've been a business coach working with my own business, working with loads of business owners. So hopefully we can touch on that a bit later as well.
Thank you, Asari. The rose among thorns, you know, she's titled as the Black Child Agenda, and I'll leave her to tell you who she is beyond and in addition to that.
Yeah, hi, greetings everyone. I'm Cheryl Phoenix, and as you know, the Black Child Agenda, but haven't always done the Black Child Agenda. Started out in the business world with the UK Black Links Business Directory, marketing, PR, public speaker. I've spoken around the world, Dubai, Qatar, New York, etc. But my main focus is really tackling the schools to prison pipeline, our young people, and economics within our community.
Thank you, Cheryl. Last but not least, and a special thanks to this gentleman because I know he's taken a break to do this, and he has only done very, very important things over the last, I think it's a year of, he's now doing his PhD, and so taking time out to do anything. You know, I've only done a measly master's, so I understand the pressure. I have an idea of what he's doing, so I'm very, very grateful that Toyin has taken a break, even for whatever short period of time he can be with us today to have this conversation. Toyin, you want to introduce yourself for those who don't know you?
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me onto this platform to talk with such wonderful spirits, including yourself. I'm a Pan-Africanist, community educator. I run Legali, Pan-African organization that challenges the misrepresentation of African people, history and culture in the media. Yeah, I'm just a professional big mouth and a troublemaker.
I suspect there are some people saying you're in very good company today then. Yeah. Because when I think about when people ask me, so Paul, what do you do? I'm just a big mouth and a troublemaker. That's that seems. And Dean, while you're there laughing, one of our friends, our mutual friends, refers to you as Paul too, because we're good to see him. So don't sit. And I think Cheryl probably has more bans from Facebook than any other living person. So she's on a ban now, So just for everybody's information before we get cracking, what I've done, I've established a YouTube channel called People Talk with Paul Lawrence, and all of these lives will be uploaded within 24 hours to the People Talk channel, and I'll then post it on my page, and of course give a copy to the contributors to each show. I think it's time for us to start to document whatever we're doing and to keep good records of the stuff we're doing, not just me, but everybody else. And we should be keeping our stuff in as diverse a range of platforms as possible. So even though I upload it to YouTube, I do keep a hard copy of everything as well, because there is no doubt that one day they will just decide to shut all of us out of all of those things. And we have to make sure that we preserve our stories however they're told. so that the day never comes where our children have to say, "Daddy, Mommy, what were you doing?" or what weren't you doing? So, yeah, to the meat of the matter. I don't even know where to start, because I can't get the image of that little boy out of my head. And, I'm looking at some Facebook posts, some social media posts, and already people are starting to ask questions like, why was he on the road? Why was he drunk? Why was he this? Why was he that? And you know what? I don't even think it begs to say that that is not the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to get over to the people, decent, honest people. I'm not talking about, white supremacists now. I'm talking about decent, ordinary Black folks. That is not the point.
Yeah.
There are only, in my eyes, 3 questions. Should he have been tased? Should he have been tased in front of a child? Should he have been tased in front of his child? That's it. Those for me are the 3 questions. And if you answer no to any of those questions, where he was going, what time he was going, whether he was pissed out of his head, whether he had insurance, whatever it was, are secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Toyin, your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to the use of force by police officers, or what was that phrase you used at the beginning of the program? The hunters. The only justification is that they feared for their own life or that of the public. Now, looking at that video, and I really dislike watching these videos. Actually, the only people who were at danger were the man being arrested, the brother, and his child.
Sorry to interrupt you, Toyin, because you just said something which is very, very important. And I know because it's second nature to you, you may not realize the relevance of what you just said about the circumstances under which a taser is allowed to be used. And that is if the officers feel threatened or a member of the public is in danger. I think that's such an important point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, because what you also have to remember is that if we were in the States, for example, that taser would have been a Magnum or whatever kind of like death giver that they authorize you. So that would have been a fatality. We would have just lost someone just there. Now, there's obviously the police have gone out and said that he had alcohol in his system and he was drunk driving, and no one here, I'm pretty sure, is actually saying that drinking while driving is a responsible thing to do. It didn't put himself at risk and other people at risk. We get that. But at that time, at that moment, at what was happening, at that point of when they were trying to arrest him, if that's what they were trying to do, they had a duty of care to him and to his child. And they failed miserably in exercising that duty of care. As a father, that whole incident affects me on another level completely. Just as a man makes me want to find the officer and do him something. And I'm not a violent person, because what he did was that he traumatized that child completely unnecessarily. So it's difficult trying to be logical when you're emotional. I mean, right now I'm a little emotionally compromised about everything.
I am too.
I really have much sympathy for those who are hiding behind the fact, well, if he hadn't done anything wrong, then he shouldn't, he wouldn't have been in that situation. The bottom of the line, those officers are supposed to be professionals. They're paid professionals. They're supposed to protect and serve. What they did was they failed. They failed in that duty, and they exercised a level of violence that was disproportionate to any threat that they experienced or that they could have pretend that they actually felt was present, because there was none. We can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm not sure I can't add anything to that. Cheryl?
It's interesting. I was shocked by what I saw. I actually shared it on my Instagram feed, and I had pure expletives in there as well, because I was fuming. So first of all, see how that little boy was running around, and to secondly, the fact that why did you do that? But then I also have to take into account, number one, they don't see us like humans. If the fact of we're talking about a set of people that used to take our children from us and feed them to alligators, we're talking about a set of people who historically have done nothing that has benefited or favored us or our children. They see us as animals, and they see us as beasts. And that's just the reality, whether we like it or not. I'm yet to see anything that in this construct, unfortunately, that we live in, where anything has benefited us, and especially when it comes to us being in contact with the police. Whenever we come into contact with the police, the first thing is, it's always our fault, no matter what it is. We've got so many young Black men locked up on charges that have never even existed, based mostly and solely on the color of their skin. We don't know if that man actually had mental health condition. We don't know if he had a heart condition. He could be dead right now. But when it comes to us as a people, they don't care. And they don't care about our children, and they don't care about us. So we have to actually work from that premise first. I've posted that video in quite a few groups, and it's interesting the amount of people, like you've already said, Paul, oh, well, if he wasn't doing, oh, the police have said that he did this. So because the police have said so, has anyone not seen the videos of where police have actually planted drugs on young Black males and said that they were actually trying to sell or trying to do other things? So because they have decided that he was drinking alcohol, but yet he was at a petrol station getting petrol. So if he was that drunk, then I don't think it would have been that complimentary. Looking at what was actually going on the screen, he didn't look like a drunk person to me, but again, I wasn't there. As far as I'm concerned, this is the nature of the beast that we're dealing with. Whenever they're dealing with our Black men and our young Black boys and even our Black women, it's a history. We don't trust them. I certainly don't trust them. And this is not all, you know, because there are some good officers out there trying to do the right thing. But just by seeing that, what we see going on in America with the fact that you would have had a bullet in your head will be coming here. Those laws will be changing. If you see the big blue vans driving around in housing estates and things like that, and them out terrorizing young Black males, it's just a sign of things to come. My question would more be, what are we as a community going to do to protect particularly our men and boys from these types of attacks in the future? Because one thing we don't realize is that every single day, our human rights are being eroded. Right now, as we speak, we're all on lockdown and quite oblivious to the Human Rights Act, the Disability Discrimination Act, and the Mental Health Act. All of those things, they're putting things in place that are going to affect us as a community more than anyone else. That's where I think our focus should also be.
Yeah, you know, Cheryl, thank you for that. I think one of the things that always clicks through my mind when I'm reading people's responses to these things is this. At the point in the video, the officers didn't know he was drunk. They didn't know he may have had an insurance violation. They didn't know anything about that. So when people put that up front, for me, that's a curiosity, because at the end of the day, they weren't operating with that hindsight.
Exactly.
Yep. And so I'm putting myself in his shoes. I could have been that gentleman there. Yep. They wouldn't know whether I was drunk or not. They wouldn't know anything. And people would be out there saying, oh, well, you know what Paul's like, you know, Paul's a bit of a loudmouth. I bet he was mouthing off. In other words, giving justification to a wholly unjustifiable action. And we have to start to think differently. Yep. It is very systematic of how they do things, that when something bad happens, they leak all the information that they only knew after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And we have to start to think smarter. Actually, for those who still don't know, and I know there's a few people on my Facebook trend who don't understand this, during lockdown, you are totally allowed to transport your children. Yep. You're allowed to transport your children. For example, if they live with a different parent, you're allowed to transfer them. So when we're asking, what was he doing on the road at 11 o'clock with a child? Why don't we say, probably he was dropping the child back home, or probably he went to collect his child? But if we, and this is the problem I have, if we are not giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt, yeah, and I'm going to support what Toyin said, None of us are going to say he should be drunk. That's cool. What we're saying is, in the moment, the way he was dealt with was incorrect.
Yeah.
Dean.
Yes, sir. To be frank, I do my best as a Pan-Africanist to keep Europeans out of my central consciousness. And then, like Al Pacino said in The Godfather, they draw you back in. I do my absolute best not to focus on the problems, but to surround myself with men and women I call gods, who are solution providers, so that we can culminate what we do to ultimately serve in solutions for us. So when I see this, I don't think like an Englishman or British citizen. I think like a sovereign. And it's already, I'm already of the perspective that we should be organizing private security to protect our people. And just as Americans say, from domestic and foreign threats, I think we should think of in that way. And especially when it comes to talking about us, because you started off with the premise that decent people are of the assertion that he may have done something wrong. Now, we have very different opinions of what decent people are. I don't assert that you're decent because you're a professional and you earn a particular amount of money. Your humanity and your empathy for your fellow African, to me, is what makes you decent as you call yourself a black man or woman. And the fact that it could have been any of us in that situation, it could have been me taking my son back to his mum. So the fear as well, when we put it in context, when we talk about compulsory vaccinations, and for all those who are aware, as I'm sure everybody on the panel is, we now live in a police state. Whether or not you are aware is irrelevant. What matters is what is. And the legislation around the coronavirus has placed us in a police state legislatively for a minimum of 2 years. Now, there needs to be an African diasporan British response to that in the measures that we put in place to protect our community at a systematic level. So this is all of our policy writers around education. We need to create policy now for when our children return to school about how the African diasporan community is gonna work within the context of the Department for Education, so that we have our own policy for our children, just as a head imam would release their own letter to say, well, 85% of this school is Muslims, so take pork out of the equation. We need to have these things. So as a father, knowing that they've been talking about mandatory vaccinations and taking people willy-nilly, you are not separating me from my child. And the fact that you're forcibly doing that means that I'm going to resist you. Then they're using that white supremacist tactic of saying, put your hands behind your back, to keep their finger on the taser, knowing that the body gives involuntary responses to electricity. So they desire to do it. All that happens is that their perverse predilection was met with an opportunity, and they carried that opportunity out. So at this stage, we really do need to start deciding what we as a community are going to do. And not only as a Pan-Africanist, but as a self-confessed separatist, which is not by force, is by choice. It's very different from when we are forced, when English people will say, well, you couldn't do that. Well, when I choose to do something, that's me doing it as a sovereign. So I speak about our separate ecosystems to protect us, because within a police state, we have no protections whatsoever. And when you have one potentially racist psychologist who can say that you are a space cadet and you'll be sectioned, it's out of our power. So we do need to organize as a community. We do need to eradicate our egos for whatever lies in the way. And we really do need to culminate as a community in terms of our intellectual capital and expertise like we never had, because we're out of options. So we need to have the mindset that we're on the Titanic and it's going down and the exit sign is over there. And everybody who goes to the exit sign will be protected within the wealth of information and expertise that's there. But those who don't, the decent people who separate themselves to be protected by this English society. At some stage, they always ball racism when it affects them. Then we are supposed to come around and have empathy. My empathy for my fellow African is 365 days of the year. So as much as initially it got my spirit, I tried to remain devoid of emotion, because I understand that my mouth might be a very effective weapon, and I have to be responsible with what I say and do at this time. So I might not be so vocal on issues, but behind the scenes with those I call gods, I'm very vocal on those issues.
Thank you, Dean. You know, I think both you and Cheryl started to hint at where we need to end up, which is about all this talk, all this anger, you know, and I'm holding my hand up right now. That's where I am. We need to have solutions to protect ourselves and to protect our communities, because otherwise it's just talk. And the net effect is it will have an effect on our mental health. If you feel that you are in a situation that is beyond your control and you have no options but to stay in it, that will have a diverse effect upon our mental health state, and probably answer the third question that we might talk about today with regards to why we are so susceptible to stuff like COVID, because it's not just a race thing. Asari, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Bernard Cord told us a long time ago, Kwame Ture told us a long time ago, back in the 60s, about institutional racism, and that analysis is still as useful today as it was then. When we're at our best, we organize ourselves, and we've managed to make small victories from small things like the Race Relations Act, the Equalities Act, and these small gains in schools. But the one definite place we've not made any real gains is in policing and the criminal justice system. That is an area that's almost like a no-go area. We're just not making any gains there. We've had the Lamy report, we've had the Stephen Lawrence report, we've had so much evidence to say what's happening, chapter and verse documented. You've got countries like France, who it's illegal to capture ethnic data. So in the UK, we don't have that issue. We've got all the data we need. All the evidence is there. So institutional racism is there. And we've had it since we were young. So from the days when I was roller skating in the streets of Harlesden and the police stopped us and told us it's illegal. And we said, well, what law is that? Where's this law come from? They tell us 18 something when they didn't even have roller skates. And from the times we were stopped, I was stopped on my way back from a police station reporting a crime, stopped by the, was it SPG in them days? Asking me where I'm going. I said, I just come back from the police station. And I could quote the police officer's name. And all these experiences we had from young time. The amount of times I got stopped by the police. I was always very polite when I was speeding, but apart from that, the other times were not justified.
I would never admit to speeding in a public place. Of course, I never do such a thing.
Never did such a thing, no. I never got a fine or anything. But it's interesting. But as I said, the institutionalization of racism is where we can always be deflected by an individual case. Oh, yes, what about this? Or what about that? Or what about this? What about that circumstance? But the institutionalized racism is that if you look at it as an aggregated situation, we have always been under-policed and over-policed. When we're victims, they're nowhere to be seen. We don't get the policing we want. Crimes are not resolved. People are not arrested. And then when it's the other way around, when we're just walking the street, we're over-policed. As I used to, when I do equality training, I raise with them, why is it the police are not systematically stopping people in Porsches and very expensive supercars? Because they're predominantly the people who are going to have cocaine and expensive drugs in their vehicles. But of course, if you stop Jonathan down in Hampstead in his Porsche, he's likely to ring. One, they're not going to drag him on the floor and taser him. Two, they're not going to shoot him. And three, he'll just jump on his phone, ring his father, who's Lord whatever, or this person connected. And the next thing, there's a whole load of weight on that police station saying, why are you stopping this person, etc., etc. So we know it's about its power as well. So it's class as well as race. And we see that these guys in the US with 10 bow ties, 5 PhDs, and still, was it Louis Gates? I remember Louis Gates a few years ago, who was a very esteemed, professional, good boy, African-American, who couldn't find his key to get in his house. And as the police arrived, I think dragged him away until he could prove that he lived there. And he suddenly realized that racism was a reality. So, you know, it don't matter how many PhDs you got or what you got, just like Oprah going in a store and them asking her, as she's sure she's got the money to pay. And she's probably one of the richest women in the whole world. So institutional racism is a constant issue, because even who you decide to stop, who you decide to follow, who you decide to follow up, is still based on the prejudices of the system. And if anybody's seen Boys in the Hood, we see the example of an African-American police officer stopping a brother in the street, pulling a gun on him and saying to him, using the N-word on him, and this is an African-American, but because he's in an institution that's institutional racist, he's still carrying those racist assumptions. And you saw the trauma. That why I saw that film was such a beautiful film, because you saw the trauma which we don't normally see, the private trauma of a young man when he goes home, and the anger of that whole incident of being stopped by the police. And then you wonder, if you had that experience 5-6 times a day, 10 times a week, why you would react the 30th time you've been stopped by the police, you know? So we see this racism as a serious problem, but we can organize and we need to just be more organized to deal with these incidents and deal with it as an overall problem of how we can get these police prosecuted and dealt with. Because that's the only way it will change.
I think, you know, heeding the words of Dean about, you know, not just focusing and getting yourself wrapped up in the anger. I think I'm gonna take a view and steer the conversation towards what you've hinted on there, Asari, Cheryl, and I know Toyin will have a strong thing in terms of, yeah, absolutely. You know what, we can sit here and we can talk all day about this and that and all sorts of stuff, and we can lament. But you guys who are on this call quite specifically. Again, none of this happened when I invited any of you on this call, so this is just a side thing. But the reason why you are on this call is because what each of you do is very much answering that question about what we can do. Yeah, it is very much answering that question about what as a community we should be doing, rather than waiting on the next event to do a couple of Facebook posts, to have a little bit of outrage, to, you know, use all the words that we know are very emotive around it. I think what I'm like to look at now and talk a bit more, and I'm going to start with you, Cheryl, because of where your focus is in the Black Child Agenda, working in the schools, is how we organize ourselves as a preemptive response to the conditions we already live in. They're not going to change by a couple of Facebook posts. They're not going to change because I'm angry today. They're not going to change because, you know, how many million people saw that little boy's, you know, distress. It's not going to change. That's not going to change it. What's going to change it is if we organize ourselves and we start to do stuff. If we ignore it, it's not going to go away. If we moan on Facebook, we'll get ourselves banned, and we won't. By the way, I don't think I've ever been banned. Don't laugh, Cheryl. We all know I'm talking about you when it comes to the ban thing. But tell us a bit more, Cheryl, not just about what you do with the Black Child Agenda, but how you see that fitting into a bigger plan, a bigger step.
Because obviously doing the Black Child Agenda, one of my key areas is obviously education. And over the years that I've been doing this, that's gone from education to children and families, to mental health, to crime. So it's actually covering the whole family structure as a community, employment law, housing, etc. But where my main focus is law, legislation, and policy. Because unless you get to change those, then we could be banging drums and marching and complaining and cussing out Facebook and, you know, everyone on Facebook and getting banned all day long. It means nothing. So one of the areas which we have done is I've utilized a lot of the barristers and the barristers' chambers and legal professionals that I do know, and we've basically come together. So whether you're working in the NHS, because there's a lot of discrimination and racism there, in the police force, in the teachers union, I speak at the National Union of Teachers almost annually, There's a problem in the teaching for Black teachers in those environments. If they speak up, then they get sacked. If you're in the law society, there's a problem with racism there as well. You speak up, you're kicked out before you even make it to the bar. So every single aspect of our existence, we're coming up against almost a brick wall or some sort of racism. So what we've done is we've put together a huge collective, and we're actually dealing with policy, we're dealing with politics, we're dealing with the institutional racism within all of these areas from a legal perspective, as well as from those individual perspective as well. So as a teacher, for example, you find there's a problem of racism in the school and you don't want to speak out because you're scared of losing your job. That's where we come in and we do it on your behalf. We take up the action on your behalf and we basically bun down Babylon on your behalf unapologetically, because the one good thing about having the Black Child Agenda is that we're not affiliated with anyone, we're not funded by anyone, so no one can pull our funding tomorrow because we've said something you don't like. I think the most that can happen is I can get blocked on Facebook. I can get over that. You just have several pages, whatever that may be. So that's kind of what's going on in the background. And whilst we're in this so-called lockdown, I'm still at court, but it's all online. But we are working on tweaking it and making sure our legal, because the one thing these people listen to is law, policy, and acts. So unless you're right now, they can turn around and say to us, oh, well, we've got the Human Rights Act. It's an act, it's not the law. We've got the, Race Discrimination Act. It's an act, it's not the law. We've got the Complaints Authority, run by police. So all of these things, we're putting a lot of pressure, getting a lot of kickback, but it's fine. There's a lot of pressure going on. So that's what we're doing. And through my personal experience of having to understand how the laws work, and through my co-directors and through those other lawyers and barristers at all the chambers, it's actually a very interesting time's going to come through. And we're not writing another report. So if people are waiting for reports, they've already written them. They're all written, so we already know what's in them. Why do we need to spend time doing yet another report? So we're actually coming straight in, kicking down doors, setting fire to things that we should do, and making those laws and acts and policies be changed for our benefit. And a lot of it, people say, oh, we can't use race. But if you're talking about racial discrimination, absolutely you can. So that's what we're doing. And we're talking about women and mental health amongst our young people, disproportionality, all of those things under one roof, and actually making some changes out here. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Let Brother Toyin just finish his quick drink. Toyin, I have a question. It's a bit of a personal question. What's the title of your thesis?
It's called The Gentrification of Protest.
See, I couldn't have planned this any better, because very, very much I find that, we're divided, as you would expect, into different types of African people who look at things in a different perspective. We have different, even terms of so-called activists, people who are very active and their focuses may be different. One may be children, women, business. But I'll just go back to the point of when you came to my eye the very first time, back in the early days of the 100 Black Men of London. Legally was a young, vibrant organization at the time. And the gentleman Toyin made a very impressive and public stand in a very intellectual manner, in a very well thought out and conscious manner. And Cheryl is smiling, so I know Cheryl remembers the incident I'm talking about very, very clearly. And we don't even have to mention it, but what we do have to recall is that we can do things intelligently, without anger, without putting ourselves at extreme risk. There's always going to be some layer of risk. And I want you, if you can, just to talk a bit more about what we can be doing and what we should be doing to protest our situation and to change. Because I don't want people to go away from this show feeling fulfilled in terms of anger expression, but I would like them to go away from the show feeling that they have learned, relearned, been reiterated how we can start to really change, even on a macro level as individuals.
That's a big ask, and I'll try. There's a really good song by Errol Dunkley that goes, everyone does their thing a little way different. And it's a very good way to look at activism. I'm going to disagree with you slightly on this idea that anger is a negative thing. Anger actually is a normal human response to injustice. And if you're not angry, then what are you? Are you placid, apathetic? What's going on? So there's nothing wrong with being angry at injustice. You're supposed to be angry at injustice. It's how we focus after that, how we utilize that anger. Do we use it in a constructive manner or a destructive manner? Do we use it to leverage what it is that we tend to obtain, or do we use it to harm ourselves? I've known from a very long time, I was blessed with a wise father who saw his young son always fighting at school, always having a go with bullies, always constantly in battles. And I had to learn to control the anger and utilize the anger and turn it into passion for doing the right thing. The anger is still there. I'm a brother. It's still deep inside. Something that a lot of African men have, and obviously African sisters have, is that ability to see red. I call it the redness. It's a curse, the red curse. That if you push, then we go red, and then we trip, and then everything gets destroyed, everything in the path. So we have to learn discipline. Discipline is how we move forward. Discipline and recognizing that everyone does their way a little bit different. So for some people, and we do a disservice when we play this down. For some people, it might be raising awareness on social media. It might be the tweet, the Facebook, it might be the YouTube, the Instagrams, all the ways that they use to talk to people is what makes things work for them. For other people, it might be the letter writing. It might be just getting down, organizing, and hitting all those laws and exposing the fallacies and the acts that Cheryl was talking about, and actually breaking down the system and challenging the system with pressure, sustained logical pressure. So they're fighting on that front as well. And then for another section of people, it might actually be physically using their bodies, going out on the streets, causing disruption to systems. One of the things that this society we live in loves is economics. Money is its god. So anything that disrupts the flow of money, of capital, drives them crazy. So we become a bit silly when we say that only one of those ways is the right way forward. We have to recognize that all of those strategies must be done systematically and at the same time. That's how we make progress. And that's why it's okay for people to have different strands and different ways of doing it, as long as we all have the same goal. A really good example of this is thinking about a group of people saying, what two numbers do you get put together to get to the number 7? And then someone saying, well, everyone knows the answer is 6 plus 1. That's the only way you can get to 7. And someone saying, no, that's foolishness. It's 5 plus 2. I said, shut your mouth, man. It's 4 plus 3. And someone saying, no, it's 7 plus 0. They're all right. What they need to be focusing on is that they're all trying to get to the same objective. It's the same Malcolm and Martin Luther King strategy. I grew up, and this is going to sound really bad, when I was a young man, I actually thought Martin Luther King was a punk. I didn't have much respect for him.
We all.
And I feel ashamed for that. Okay, and then I had to do this Radio 4 debate, and they cast me as Malcolm X, and I was blessed with having Dr. Hakeem Addy by my side, and I think they cast Simon Woolley as Martin Luther King. And so I was going to go in there and just rip him to shreds. But what I did before I went on the radio was that I got this massive book of every single speech Martin Luther King had said and every letter he had written. I'm a nerd. That's the kind of thing I do. And I read them. And when you read some of the stuff that he wrote when he was in jail, when their foot was on his neck and you saw Martin Luther King wake up, you start to realize actually he was just doing his thing a little way different. You see, for Malcolm, he was in a space in America where there was enough Africans around Harlem where that if you step to us, it's kind of like someone trying to give us a racist attack in Brixton. There's a critical mass of us to say, you know what?
Not gonna work.
Some of us are gonna step up to it. But Martin Luther King, he was in the South. That's where we were being lynched. So you had to be strategic in the way that you approach them. Now, I know my spirit. I'm a Malcolm man. I always have been, I always will be. And so my instinct is always, if someone tries to hit me, I don't turn the other cheek, I'll block it. And if they try again, I have to stop them. That's it. But there's a very famous piece of history with Dr. Martin Luther King that happened. And I don't know if you know this story. He was doing one of his speeches in Southern America. And someone came on stage and they punched him. And what happened was that Martin Luther King's security ran up to him to protect him. And he said, no, leave him. We're a non-violent movement. And so the guy punched Martin Luther King again. And I got outraged. I thought, what is wrong with you, man? And so what happened was that the guy punched him again. The security were getting vexed, but Martin Luther King wouldn't let him touch him, and they went. And I thought, this is why I grew up as a man thinking he was a punk. And then Malcolm did something that taught me that we must think intelligently. He wrote a letter. That's all it took, one letter. He wrote a letter to the group, it's some rednecks, to the people who were attacking Martin Luther King. And he said to them, listen carefully. My brother's tactic of non-violence might tie his hand, but make no doubt the two of us, even if we disagree on issues, have the same objective. And if you ever place your hand on that brother again, then we will be coming to Southern America and you will be having to deal with us. And you see, this is why I say that when we're thinking about how we deal with issues, we have to embrace, I know I can be prickly. You know, I'm often like the cactus. So some people like me, some people don't. It's kind of like the boiled plantain or the fried plantain. Some people like it boiled. I can't stand it boiled.
Fried.
Fried plantain.
And it's plantain, by the way, not plantain.
Okay, plantain, you know, I don't know. But this is the point. So when you're asking me, and I know I've been going on a bit, when you're asking me, how do we deal with these things? It's recognizing your spirit, know who you are. We say it a lot as Pan-Africanists, know thyself. Know, some people are very good at taking rubbish from the system and then keeping calm and then sharing information that we need to take the system down on certain levels. Other people like me, you hit us and there's only so much before we explode. So you have to know which movement you join, which are the acts that make the difference, because this is going to be critical. This is right now in this time, if anyone says they know what's going to happen post-COVID, they're lying. Unless you're in touch with some mega diviner, no one has an idea what's going on because the system itself is reinventing itself. What we do know is that when the system is so ruthless that even some of their own corporations are losing billions, we are going to be dying. If we are not being shielded at this particular time, when our lives are at risk, what on earth do you think they're going to do when they decide who are they going to make redundant, which businesses are they going to pull funding from, whose rents are they going to increase, who's going to be evicted? That's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to happen, but what we do know is that we have to then be prepared to defend ourselves, to organize, to have strategies to look after each other. That's the issue right now. And that's why when it comes to activism, we can't just think about marching or just protesting or just using the clicker, but we can't diminish that because that's what raises awareness. We have to do all of it, not just some of it, all of it.
I think, you know what, I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back because even though I said to my friend Tony Harrison when he asked me what we're talking about that I didn't know, as it turns out, we are talking about very much the very things that I started out a week ago when I thought we wanted to have this conversation and why I chose the people on this call. And very, very much, and this is where I'm going to steer yourself, Dean, I'm going to bring you in next, is to talk about COVID's going to go away. Yeah, it's going to go away one day. And what Toyin just said, you know, because of some other work that I do, I'm very aware that the so-called normal is already changing. Yep. And the reason why I wanted to have this session this week, Sunday, was to talk about, as a people, forget racism if you can, but as a people, what are we doing preparing ourselves for the new normal? You know, the conspiracy theorists are saying that this is the Matrix system reset. Yep, I love a good sci-fi as much as the next person. But the fallacy and the mistake, the error would be, if this is indeed a system reset, that we sit back and watch the system reset with no plans for what happens next. So I'll give you a good example. So I've been talking to a brother online who was into event promotions with artists, DJs, and that sort of stuff. And he's lamenting the situation. He's saying, what can we do? There's nothing we can do. We're not making any money. And I'm saying, well, if you go to Ticketmaster, you'll see on Ticketmaster that all of these artists are doing stuff. They're doing online stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but what about the vibe? Well, the vibe will be crap. but and I said to him, you are still thinking in old money. Yeah, you're thinking in old money. You think that we, the public, need to hear Beres at the same quality as if we were in a concert. I don't. I just need to hear Beres.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, but you only have, I said, look, just like how the string up man who used to string up your sound system was the most important man, because if he didn't get it right, nothing happened. Go out and find yourself an IT geek. One of these guys who know how to manipulate IT. Yeah, there you go. To get you live, to get your stuff live, so you're not restricted to 100 people. Start to think in new money, because what comes next bears no resemblance to what has gone before. And if we are not ready, as Toyin said, we will be at the bottom of the pecking order. Because quite rightly, I'm looking after me and my family first.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take that anyhow you want to take it. Yeah, I'm not looking at the next man and complaining that he's looking after his people first, because that's what I'm doing. So we have to position ourselves. And Dean, I'd like you to talk to us about, how are we positioning ourselves? What are the opportunities? Because this is where I'm thinking now. I'm thinking about the opportunities that are arising out of this new normal.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of us who might be watching what's happening with London Real right now, who interviewed David Icke and was banned. Well, they just deplatformed particular videos across every single platform. And what he went and did was raise money from within those who had sympathies with the work that he's doing. And initially he raised $250,000, that went to 750 grand, and is now over £1 million to build his platform, the Freedom Platform. Because he is a visionary, he attracts visionaries who have empathy with what he's doing. Now, 2 years ago, I started working with a gentleman who was establishing a crypto coin. And there were also some of us in the sovereign space that were also seeking to create sovereign jurisdictions within the African continent, which has happened. So being aware of all of this behind the scenes and not working within social media, my thing was that I knew a financial tsunami was coming. I did not know how that financial tsunami was going to be executed. Let's say that financial tsunami is the reset. Now, it happens that the virus is real. The virus was created in a lab and it was released. But I heard Ice-T say very eloquently in street vernacular, when bullets are flying, don't try and figure the direction they're coming from. Yeah. Cover your ass. And I've always been of that mindset. Cover your ass and know, if you can do that for yourself, how do you transfer that to the people with self-preservation? So then I listened to London Real, because there are particular parallels with what we are both doing in enabling people to protect themselves within this reset. And he had a gentleman talking about the 5 crypto coins that you can invest in $500 that will be worth 5 million in X amount of years. And this is exactly what represents itself with the Sable Ascent coin as a Pan-Africanist currency. So more than just the investment vehicles that many coins are, it's actually a currency that is on all of the exchanges, but would also be decentralized at the same time, just like off-ledger banking that the British do, which is where they take care of all their wonderful laundry money, which is what actually keeps the city sustainable. And just to give a clue, the city is a sovereign jurisdiction which lies outside of UK legislation. And that's why people may wonder why they've always had their own police force, their own set of regulations, why they can launder money and interact with off-ledger banking, which is on the islands. So it works in a particular way for a cabal of men not unlike myself, who just happen to be our adversaries. So I say things like, I'm setting up instruments to map us, like a census of eligible voters nationally. Why do we need to know what our influence is in elections? Because it makes us powerful and it gives us leverage. It's not that anybody's more fantastic or innovative than us. It's just that they're better organized, because they've come with all of those from the various grassroots organizations. People may call me and say, oh, this is happening. And I say, well, I'm not grassroots, and I'll give you their phone number. They say the person wants to talk to you. I say, that's not my background. I'm going to give you the person. I'm no longer grassroots. My role is to work with the grassroots organizations to extract what the juice of that is and collaborate with all of us in any particular area. So that may be educational, bring all of the educational people together. There's no way that Cheryl should be unfunded. So when Dr. Jude came up with the initiative of raising $1 million, immediately our first thoughts are Black Child Agenda, taking positive steps. Those organizations aren't supposed to be unfunded. Those organizations are supposed to be part of our ecosystem, which is funded, because it makes us a protected people. And what should be foremost in all of our minds is making British African diasporans a protected people, because we're not, and only we're going to do that. We're not going to do that by forcing their legislation. We're going to be doing it by creating our own policy that we have the power to protect physically, economically, and in terms of ring fencing what our resources are. The minute we're using our own currency, and there is an Afrikaans community which accesses its own country in South Africa with its own currency.
That is scarily good.
So if we don't actually take a note to know that Afrikaans can operate autonomously in Africa, then we're missing a trick. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And it's only our fears that we aren't sovereigns, that we need somebody else to grant us permissions, that stops us from doing anything. And that's why I separate from our people, because you spoke about your assertion of who was decent earlier, to contributors and beneficiaries. It's not the stage, it's the stage for me to market to beneficiaries, but it's the stage for me to have dialogue with contributors, because contributors are going to set an ecosystem where we can work autonomously of this nation, separately, by choice, as a protected people under our own governance.
Look, I can only but say, I remember when I attended one of your events, and people were saying to me, you know, what about unity? Don't we need unity? Don't we need this? And I said very much, and I know Dean will remember this, and I said very much what Toyin was saying. I don't need you to think the same as me. I just need you to be looking in the same direction as me. And as long as you're looking in the same direction, you do your thing, I do my thing. And so everything that we're talking about today is really resonating. And, you know,
sorry, I just want to make one more point.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, yesterday, Iola was playing Fela Kuti, and a lyric jumped out at me. And he said, water no got in me. And I said, you got it. Water no got in me. Water is good in all of its forms. the power of a nozzle that can cut through concrete, the flow of the river. In a cup, it sustains us. We need to be water in all of its forms that is all going to join the ocean at some stage. My thing is just come where we're going, because we're going to get there. We need our common denominator that brings us all together.
Asari, I have always had a good, strong interest in the business aspects. And I know very much about what you do as a business coach. And I've always felt when I work with small Black businesses who are trying to do stuff, even young potential entrepreneurs about trying to move stuff. And I know that right now, in this COVID moment, a lot of people are panicking about the business stuff and about what it means for their business, what it means for their potential businesses. You know, what's the business climate going to be like? I know that you are having these conversations with your clients. This is something I know. And I know that you can bring to us now just a sort of information that, let's say, a budding entrepreneur, someone who's an established person who, you know, they may be a bit frightened now. What would you say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Been running these round the clock now, trying to get them out into the community as much as possible. Round the clock webinars that are just free every Tuesday, every Thursday night, and I'm doing a mastermind group on Thursdays. And basically what I've been saying is, you can't stay still. Anybody who's waiting to see, I don't know what they're waiting for, because we've had nearly 8 weeks already. You know, I never used Zoom until, was it March or whenever? And I went on Zoom the first week and just did it, because I don't know where people are waiting for. You know, when you're going to waiting for, you got to move now. So people should be thinking about, you know, don't wait for borrowers to say what's going to happen over the next few weeks. Obviously, we're interested to hear how the phasing is going to work, because anybody who's in hairdresser, you know, the barbershop and the restaurants, and, you know, what I call our frontline, so-called, most of them are ethnic-based businesses. They're the ones who have been closed down and completely wiped out. But again, as you said, people are thinking the wrong way, because I've got people who do massage and said, I got one person saying, I do massage, I can't do anything. And I got another person charging massage classes online and showing people like how you can do couples massage, stuff like that. Last night, as you said, the DJs, I've got a new client who's in the events industry. He's repositioning himself. I can't even mention what he's going to launch shortly, but he's looking to launch something shortly where you can go to an entertainment event safely with social distancing, all right? Basically using vehicles, right? But the other one is, last night, we're on a jump up from 6 till 10 o'clock, 600 people on Zoom and on Facebook. If they had charged £1, £1, I reckon most of those people would have probably paid the pound.
Exactly.
They could have made £600 in 4 hours, okay? And as I said, people were jumping on from all parts of the world, so they could have done it in multiple currencies and so on. There's lots of opportunities out there. People have got to rethink the way they do their businesses. So you got one yoga teacher is saying, I don't know what to do. Another yoga teacher who used to get £30 at the sports center for doing an hour is now charging £5 an hour, getting 25 people a time, sitting at home. So that's £125 an hour. So their hourly rate has gone through the roof. They don't even have to move. You know, you could, how many times can you do that a week? However many times you like. So some of the things, I've even written a few things down. I wrote down a list of things they should be doing. One, there's government help out there, okay? Whatever you think of the government, there's some free money as well as some potential borrowed money that's available. Now, the first loan scheme was a sham, which telling you got to put up your house and all kind of stuff. Forget that one. But the second loan scheme allows you, if you have a business, to borrow 25% at a cap of 50,000, 25% of what you earn in the last year, capped at 50,000. Now, I suggest most of our business owners are not over 200,000 a year earnings. So don't worry about the 50,000 cap. So in other words, you can borrow that money interest free for a year, don't pay it back for the first year, and then you can pay it off 6 years. Now, for every 10,000 you borrow, it's about £140 a month to pay that off over 6 years. So if you had £10,000 in your bank account right now, you could do something with your business and develop that over the next year. If you don't need it, pay it back, interest-free in a year's time. So there's that opportunity. There's also the 80%, the furloughing. Now, I know some of our community who are organizing business, they furlough their staff, but there's also a furlough for people who've got businesses as well. My accountant gave me a ring. Within 2 days, it was in my account, 80% of what I was earning. This is 80% of your declared income, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of people who, that's a bit of a problem for them. But 80% of your declared income is better than 0% of your declared income, right? So it's still 80%, right? The other things I think we should be doing is we're missing loads of tricks there. You've got organizations like BNI. I've been in BNI, this is my 9th year now, and I cringe sometimes at these BNI meetings. But the point is, it's the world's #1 business networking organization. We could do a BNI for ourselves. We could do something like a BNI in our own community, which is business networking, and not going somewhere where we just chit chat with each other, share business cards, and nothing happens. No, I'm talking about a structured approach where the sole aim of the network is to look for business opportunities for each other. So you don't come there with your hand empty. You come there saying, right, Dean, what do you want? Who would you like an introduction to? I would like an introduction to this college. I would like an introduction to this business owner. I would like an introduction to a homeowner. Right, okay. Who among us can introduce Dean to that person? Right, let's write that down. I'm going to make a few phone calls tomorrow or even right now, and I'm going to get you that introduction. And this is a totally different way of doing business, right? Totally different way of doing business. So there's loads of these things we should be doing. And even if you're an employee, to me, the trade union movement, this is why I mentioned this. Most people don't know my trade union history, only those who were with me back in the day. But back in the 80s, I was heavily involved in the trade union movement. I learned so many organizational skills from being in the trade union movement, very well organized, disciplined structures. And we started the first Black workers groups back in the 1980s when the government didn't want us, employers didn't want us, and the trade union didn't want us. But we just told them we were doing it and we did it. Now, you get mainstream politicians say, oh yeah, Black staff networks is all the new rage. But the thing is, they're not that well organized as the trade unions, but the trade unions are still organized as Black workers. And a lot of our people say, why would we join a trade union? I think they're crazy. You should be in a trade union. So all these organized structures we can make use of. So, but from a business point of view, there's lots we can be doing to reposition our businesses. And the other one that makes me laugh the most is the ones with the shutters down, which is, we can put the online example as well. I say to people, if I Google you right now, your name or your business, and I can't find you, you might as well have a shutter down on a high street with nothing on the shutter. You know how many Black restaurants got the shutters down right now with no poster to say, how do we ring you? Are you still providing food? Are you doing online? Can you do delivery? Whatever. They just close the shutters. I know that's nothing we can do when loads of other people are doing it. So there's so many things we could be doing. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to reposition our businesses, skill up, because we need a bit of customer care training. Mm-hmm. We need to skill up on that one, but also learn how to sell. Because if you can't sell, you can't make money. But there's, as I said, and I think this is the best kick up the Kazi that we've had for a long time.
Yes.
Because even people like me who are saying this was in Rwanda last year, racking my brains trying to think, well, how am I going to do business in Rwanda? How's this going to work how often am I going to be back there? And then the lockdown happened. I'm thinking, right, well, I'm going to go back this year. So how am I going to go back? And then hang on, Rwanda's only 1 hour time difference. So what's to stop me doing business and communicating with people in Rwanda right now when it's only 4:15 in Rwanda right now? So there's no reason why we can't be doing Pan-African activity in terms of business opportunities right now. And guess what? A lot of those African governments are looking for people in the diaspora to do business with them and have relationships with them. But it's not something they're shouting off the rooftops, but they are doing loads of work around this. And if we get our act together, we can be part of that new direction. I don't mean recolonize Africa either, going in some little gated community in Ghana like some of the African Americans do. We don't talk to the local people. I don't mean that kind of way of doing it, but certainly we can integrate with those communities. And certainly that's my agenda.
I think there's some very, very important points there, because no secret, I run Just Tickets, and we had 2 weeks of 0 ticket sales and almost 100% refund requests. And I sat down there having a conversation with myself, what are you going to do? Are you going to let 3 years of work just disappear and sink, or are you going to take up the phone? I took up the phone. I spoke to one of the sisters who has an event every 2 months on my page. And I said, why aren't you having an event? Oh, you know, I'm a technophobe, you know. I said, okay, don't worry about that. I'll put you on my platform. I'll put you on my Zoom platform. You tell me what date you want to do it. Oh, but I said, don't worry. I'll work as your engineer in the background and I'll make sure your Zoom is all sorted out. I'll set it up for you. I get about 2 emails a week from her saying, thank you so much for pushing me. I'm now making money. I'm at home. I'm making money and I don't have to pay for a venue. Yeah. And she's getting more and more confident. And now we've come back. So what we're seeing is after the initial shock of the lockdown, yeah, everybody sort of went flat. But there are people out there who are starting to apply themselves to what they can do. And I can tell you for free, my site is now back to our 2018 revenues. Yeah, because everybody is pushing something out there. And guess what? Like I said to the guy about the artist, people want something. Yeah. And if you have something educational, instructional, entertaining, whatever it is, yeah, you should be pushing it out there to get people.
Absolutely.
And I think for those of people who are listening who don't quite get it, one of the things we need to understand, and I know, you know, Toyin will love this because I'm about to unleash my geek. The reality of the matter is the biggest commodity right now that they're trading with is your data.
Data is king.
And so if you are in a situation where your business is not earning any money, but you have also closed down your collection of data, then you're in what we call double jeopardy. Yeah, because when you see people like Ed Sheeran or whoever it is running a free concert online, it ain't free. He's getting your data. Yeah, and they know what to do with your data to extract a subscription to something. The sale of a t-shirt, it doesn't matter. They want your data. Understand this. So if you're a business person and you're out there saying, well, you know, who's going to pay, I don't know, 25 quid to hear me talk for an hour online? Do it free. Do it free. Get the people in and cross-sell.
Yeah, get the data.
Cross-sell them something. Because if they come to look for you and they come and do your course for 25 minutes for a half an hour, then you could probably sell them something bigger. Cheryl, don't frighten me like that with your second logging in. Yeah, I know. I'm serious. The reason why I said that is because I know a lot of events have been Zoom bombed, and I'm trying to make sure that we protect our platform as much as possible, because I know that this is just the sort of conversation that they would love to target. Look, guys, we've gone over the hour, and I really don't care. But what I am going to ask is for each of you to give me, and I'm going to start with Cheryl, of course, the sort of takeaway that we would like. And we're focusing now on just that last bit, that last mile about what, as a people, Toyin said, we all can't do it the same way. He's right. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Cheryl, what's your way? What's your thing? And what would you like people to help you with? And how can they contact you?
Well, it's like 3 different parts, really. They can contact me, just Google me, Cheryl Phoenix or the Black Child Agenda. We do come up. And also, for what we need, bodies, people that can actively do works, whether that is helping us doing some of our research and reading paperwork and files, just getting active, because what we're doing is mammoth. And there's a team behind it already, but we always need more people. Understand that everything is going online. One thing that people do need to realize, just even from a Black Child Agenda perspective and from a wider perspective, most of even the legal side of things, family courts, not so much crime, but there is a lot, most things will be online. So for those that aren't very technically savvy, you're going to have to learn how to become more technical and use a lot of the online platforms, because the courts are online right now. Most of my cases, I'm loving it though, I can't lie. Being in my pajamas and just seeing my head.
So I shouldn't ask anybody to stand up.
So everything's fine and it is going down that route. We've had training from the legal side of things with regards to how to actually do this and present in documents. So a lot of people, you're going to have to know how to actually do that. We're always looking for people to help, particularly our younger generation. I've got a lot of young people on board, a lot of young junior barristers, solicitors, etc. We're looking for more of you, even from our elder generation as well, or olders, definitely to get on board and get involved, because we need more advocates. We've got a team in Manchester and in Birmingham, but we're looking to make sure that we are countrywide, because I do a lot of traveling, but obviously not anymore. So yeah, that is what I would say, and just really take what's going on seriously. Like my son last week bought his new car. He stopped every single day, every day. And the only thing that I know that saved him is, number one, his knowledge of the law and what they were questioning him about and how his approach was, to where he actually, in the end, he got fed up with them and told them straight, if you stop me again, it's going to be a problem. You know, he was that angry. So also making sure you're training your children. Parents with children, particularly with special educational needs, you need to keep them close. You need to try and make sure you tap in, because it is a very frightening time. There are a lot of things going on the road. I'm talking from an everyday practical standpoint now, let alone the community collective. Because whilst we as the parents, so to speak, of the community, I don't think a lot of that information is being fed down to the children so that they know how to manage themselves. When they come into contact with this new police state that we are going to be living in, the police are driving around. Some of them are bored and looking for things to do. And your son or daughter will be that target. You have to train them on how to do that. And we are going to do some online training around that and how the law works. And with my co-director, Alison, who you guys all know as well, with regards to things like that. From us as a community as well, we need to start speaking more to each other, I think. I know there's a lot of conversations going on in the background, but we need to make sure that we're speaking more to each other. We don't have to like each other. You know, we don't have to always agree, like Toyin said, but if we're trying to get to the same end, rather than battling and fighting and squabbling like we don't want our children to do, then we need to set that example. Continent to look at, that we should also be investing in. We've got the Caribbean to look at that we should also be investing in, and actually making waves. We keep talking about the Asian community, the Jewish community, and this community, and they're doing this, they've got their own schools, they've got their this, that, and the other. Yes, they do. Has 100% of that money come out of their own pockets? No, it hasn't. They've used the same system that we're all a part of, that we're all paying taxes into, and actually made sure they found a way of actually retrieving some of that money to use for their communities. We need to start being realistic about what's really happening with us. We want to try and be, oh, well, that's not for us. Well, no, it is. If our parents and our grandparents have paid into the system, but we're the only community that don't seem to be benefiting from it, then we need to actually put pressure, and it brings me back again to policy, legislation, act, and these sorts of things, and naming and shaming, and actually really speaking out. Yes, will they shut you down on Facebook? There's how many billions of people on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We need to start, and even our own platforms, we need to start actually shouting out and making them listen and being unapologetic in our approach. That doesn't mean to say that we hate all of one particular demographic or that particular demographic. It is about doing for self and making sure we're strategic in how we do that. And if we're not educating the next generation on how they can do that and how they can make money and live a decent life in this time, investment, business, stocks, shares, all of these things are accessible to us. And we need to start pooling resources like we keep talking about. We need to pool our resources. I'm sick of hearing it. So tired of hearing us, oh, what we need to do is, why don't we just get on and do it? Start with 3 people, 5 people, like the partner system back in the day. That's all we need to do. Just get active. That's it. I don't like the long talking. I can't be bothered with the chitter chatter or attending meetings. Most people don't see me at meetings because it's a lot of the time a talking shop with little action. If someone is calling me to come and actually do some action, where do I invest my money? What do you need me to do? Then that's the type of people that I'm personally interested in, getting work done. And I know the rest of the people on the panel that you've got today are those types that we just start actually doing stuff, each one teach one. So that's my little nuggets.
Little. Okay. Toyin, again, quick thank you, because I know taking time out from your PhD is I hope, time well spent. And before we go, I'd really like you to just talk to us about what you see as the next moves, I don't know if you want people to contact you right now. You probably want to stay. You probably want to stay doing your work. But what's your closing words, sir?
Well, thank you for inviting me, Paul. I mean, I came really to speak about one major issue, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's good to actually listen to the wealth of knowledge from everyone else on this chat. I'm not economist. I mean, I'm not very good with economics. I'm not good with, well, I'm okay with business. I did run a couple of record labels for a very long time back in the 80s, but that's not my area of expertise. My issue and my nugget is that for all the opportunities that will exist, for all the possible futures that we can have and that we can find the ways to do good with, we need to survive. This is my biggest issue right now. We are in a very precarious situation where those of us who are on the front line, those of us who are not just physically vulnerable, but economically vulnerable, and that's very important, I make that point, are not being shielded. Someone wrote on one of the posts that I put up something really powerful, and she said, what's happening right now is one of the reasons why they are not shielding us is because they're using our body to shield them. And that's exactly what's happening. We are on the front line, and a lot of the people who should actually be going to their managers, to their employers, to whatever it is and saying, look, you need to redeploy me. You need to make sure, maybe for the next few weeks, you sit at a reception desk, you do a little bit of security work, I'll do the photocopying, I'll do the other work. You can give me extra training on the other things that you do, which, I can do for the time being. They're frightened to say this because they're worried about their rent. They're worried about being able to feed their children, feed themselves. But we have to make sure that that message that they need to be shielded right now is heard by everyone. And I know I sound like a scratched record, and I know all the theories. I've heard every single theory pretty much to do with this COVID-19. And the government's acting in the same way. But we also know that we are at most risk. And we're not at most risk on the motherland, and we're not at most risk in the diaspora. I'm talking about the Caribbean. We're at most risk in nations where we are a minority and where there is structural racism.
Simple as.
And people don't really want to say this. They don't like hearing the words white supremacy. And okay, it's fine. But the facts are, wherever we are in a minority, wherever we do not have political power, or we perceive ourselves as not having political power, we are at risk. And so that means that we have to make the decision to make change. So all the things that we're talking about, and I've been loving this discussion, what Dean's been talking about. I mean, all of you have been just this creative thinking. I mean, what you were talking about, Paul, was what they call surveillance capitalism, this idea of using our data, and it's been harvested, and we know it's been harvested and it's been used to make profit. And so why don't we put value in it? Why don't we take stock in it? But that's not my area of expertise. I have an interest in knowing it. I'm very much into the privacy of data, but I understand that actually we need to recognize that we have value in so many different fields and so many different aspects. But all of that means nothing if we're dead. And what we need to understand, of the 30,000 plus people that have lost their lives in this country due to this coronavirus nonsense, some of them are going to be impacting on our lives when lockdown finishes. Every single person that we know has a micro universe around them. They have connections and links. And we think that we're separate. I think it was Will Smith who said something about 7 degrees of separation. There was some film or some nonsense about this. The bottom line is that somebody who's not met, who doesn't know anyone who's lost someone from coronavirus, sometimes they lose empathy. They sometimes think, well, it's all been hyped up. It's all over there. And what they don't recognize that actually that's coming home. That's coming to you. I have a son with sickle cell. So I have to deal. Not only do I have to be very careful in my own home to shield my own son, but also with the own community that I support. So there's so many different issues. It's not just you, it's your family, it's your community, it's your neighborhood. So I just want us to recognize that we have a duty of care. Forget the government has a duty of care, forget employees of it, but we have a duty of care to remind those people that we love, that we care for, to actually, shield yourself. If you can't talk to your manager alone, group up with a couple of people and put it in writing and just do it. Then all these other discussions that we're having, which we need to continue having, they're very important discussions, have more worth, because I'm sure all of you have lost or know someone close who's actually we've lost. And that pain isn't going away anytime soon. And there's no guarantee, especially if that clown kind of like, you know, lowers the restrictions on lockdown. There's no guarantee that there's not going to be a second peak. And I'm a very optimistic person. I don't do conspiracies. I don't go looking for trouble. I just deal with it when it comes towards me. So, you know, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm ranting, because when you called me, that was really the thing I wanted to talk about, the shielding thing. It's been worth having this discussion. You know, the PhD is a nightmare for me at the moment. It's very difficult to write nonsense. It's not nonsense, but you know, you have to write in a way that sometimes does your head in and can't just get straight to the point. And that kills your soul when people that you know are becoming ill and they're dying and all these kind of things are happening. But I want to say love to you all, because I had to sign out. Thank you for the platform. Keep doing what you're doing. If there's anything I can do to help anyone, I shouldn't say that because I know my capacity is not there. I will try. That's the curse. I can't help it. The words coming out of my mouth. I am who I am. I can't be anyone that I am. But I do know, and this is something I'll say. This is because you know, we have to also protect our mental health.
Absolutely.
We have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, of our well-being, of ourselves and those around us. I'm very bad at that. I know in the last couple of days, I've only had 6 hours sleep. And I know that what happens after that, the third or fourth day, I start to fall unwell, and I start to get the cold, and then so I know that I've got to fix up. And we are in a very strange time where we're getting used to it, but this is not usual.
Yeah.
But one thing about us as a people is that we are still standing. We are very creative, innovative people. We do have allies that we can rely on. I know I often say that when the stuff hits the fan, we are generally on our own. And we have to operate like that at all times. Dean is completely right. We have to have that mindset that no one's going to come back to save us, because we were under this for over 500 years. So we have to know that. But we are in a world where there are networks, there are people who will do things to support us, and they will put their neck on the front line. So I'm just saying, when we have those people, when we have those connections, look after self, recharge. Now, I think I'm going to leave it there because, yeah, I've run out of steam.
Look, when a man like you runs out of steam, as you put it, it's all good. Look, this is the beauty of us trying to do stuff for ourselves. Yeah, this is the beauty of trying to do stuff for ourselves. And you know, before I go to Dean and Asari, I think the very important part about doing things ourselves, I think it also forces others to respect us. I think you know, if you're looking on a people who are accepting whatever it is you're meeting out with very little constructive resistance, you don't respect an enemy like that. Yeah, you see them as weak. And I think I certainly can't handle the concept that someone sees me as inferior. People call me arrogant, call me whatever you choose to, but I can't handle the concept. Yep, I'm happy doing battle with you, but if you think I'm inferior to you, and if my response gives you credence to think that, then that's where I have a problem with myself. And so all of what we're talking about begins with how we think about ourselves. You know, I put a post up about us being so bogged down just trying to survive that we kind of in a place where we think, well, I have more than mom and dad, so I'm actually thriving. Yeah, I don't want to survive. I don't want my son to survive. I get the word. I want him to thrive.
Yeah.
Because he has that potential. He has that right as a human being. Dean, I'm going to ask you to keep it short.
Sure. Yeah, you said something very important, and it brings me to an analogy I heard the other day. He said, when somebody is sitting inside their broken down car gesturing you over, you just leave them, don't it? Because you're lazy. Now, if you see somebody, a brother or sister, pushing their car, you're not inclined to just go and join them without them asking, because you can see the spirit of what they're doing. And I think all the people on this panel definitely are in the spirit of people who push the car and then become joined, because there's an energy in that. Kinetic energy is interesting. If you see somebody sitting on the bridge with a cat between their legs, you're inclined to just walk past them because it's not interesting. You know you're going to find them in exactly the same spot tomorrow. But if you see someone who has an energy about them, a kinetic energy that wants to get things done, then there's a reason to join. There's a potential for something to happen beyond them coming back tomorrow in a very needy way that's reliant. So the first thing I've done is invited everyone on the panel into the LinkedIn working group, where throughout the years, the people that I've been surrounding myself with as professionals are all in one space to start collaborating on each other's projects and what they're doing, because ultimately, as Toyin said, it is one project. And I think when we're in the position like the imam or the head rabbi can release a letter that represents their community to the government and says, no, we don't do this, or we do this, and this is our policy and our take, we'll be in a much better position. What I call on are experts in data capture. We've recently set up the Podio so that we can start taking a number of census, because we need to quantify our community and what we are in every single area, what we contribute economically, what our actual numbers are in terms of the country, what our eligible voters look like as influencers to elections. So in all of those areas, we need to quantify for our community exactly what it looks like, so that we can have power, not only within ourselves, but also when negotiating with the so-called authorities who we've put above us because we've failed to create any kind of self-determination for our own community. So like Cheryl, I call on the experts to join, who are policy writers, who are grassroots organizations, to culminate resources and what we do, so that also whenever any of the people need them, we can signpost exactly who everybody is in every single borough and county across the country.
Oh, that's it. You know, we're saying goodbye to Toyin. He has to go off and do stuff. Toyin, thank you so much for joining. And you know what? Good luck. I know you're going to nail it in the language and vernacular that they understand.
Thank you, Asha, and everyone. Please stay safe, yeah?
Will
Take
do.
care, bro.
Asari, we're going to wrap up with yourself here. Just your last thoughts, you know.
Yeah.
How can people contact you? How can they benefit? And what's the last things you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, just the last few thoughts. One, it's easy to contact me because my name's quite unique. So just Google it. It comes up #1 on Google, website, LinkedIn, everything just comes up straight away. All the stuff I'm running is all on my website. Just go on the events page. I've got about 5 sessions every week. It's all sorts of stuff on there you can go on. The other thing is I'd like to just mention that there's a call for an independent inquiry on the impact of COVID-19 on the Black community. Well, they're saying the BAME community, but it's the same thing. I support that, and I think we should all support that. No questions about that. We should import independent inquiry, must be independent inquiry on that one. The other thing is just some things that I think we should do straight away. I think as business owners, for a start, you mentioned, you know, there's some simple softwares people can do and buy to take their business to another level. So one of the things I know people don't know about is how cheap you can get websites. Sorry about anybody who's online who does expensive websites, but you can do an expensive website if you need e-commerce, But if you don't need e-commerce, to be honest, most people, a basic website will do. And those basic websites are very cheap these days. You can get landing pages. People should know about landing pages because that's how most of these big organizations, well, the clever salespeople in the US do it all the time. People don't even know they're on a landing page and they get data capture all day long. So saying what you were saying, I'm doing free webinars. I've got data capture on all the people who have booked on my webinars over the last 8 weeks. So I can market to them. I've cleaned up my CRM system. CRM is another one we can buy. All these are cheap, by the way. Landing pages, I use leadpages.net. It's £30 a month. The CRM system, which is customer relationship management system, is only about £30 a month. You can capture all the data of all your clients, all your prospects on there, and you can manage it and organize it and so on. We've also, of course, we should be investing in video conferencing technology, whether it's Zoom or GoToWebinar, or even you can get free if you got Microsoft 365, you can get Teams, so you can do it on Teams as well. So there's so much.
Google just brought out Google Meeting, which is free as well.
Google Meeting's free. There's so many different ones you can do there. So that's kind of my finishing thing really, is that we just need to get organized with these basic tools. And virtually any business, if people are in business, I want to hear from them. There's businesses I contacted very early on that frustrate me when I see what's happened. The businesses I contacted in their early days, in their first year, said, look, I want to help. And they said, oh, well, I'm not ready for help yet. Next thing, last time I called them, they were shut. And I don't mean because of COVID, they shut before COVID because their business went out of business. You know, so there's people here who are willing to help. I run sessions with all different peoples in my sessions. And sometimes I have some of our community people in the sessions, especially if they're community organizers, and they might have the money to pay. And I said to them, you sit there with your chest up and your head high. No, who knows, apart from me and you, who knows whether you're paying or ain't paying? That's our prerogative, right? It's whether they pay.
Right.
Right. We must support our own community. So there's just so much out there, so much help. I just hope people will click onto those webinars and just let the business owners come and connect with me. We can talk. We can have a conversation, and whatever help I can give, I can give. I mean, I'm doing 3 hours a week, free minimum on group sessions, and I'm still offering 5 hours a week free coaching for people who want a session with me. All they have to do is ask and do it. And guess what? In 8 weeks, how many people asked? 1.
Well, Paul Lawrence from Just Tickets is asking.
No problem. Let's book in.
We'll book it in, because guess what? The reality of the matter is this. What I have learned over the years that I've lived here in the UK is that we actually have all we need.
All the skills. We
just need to use it. Yeah. When I started doing these lives, I wanted to make sure that I could reproduce it. I could have them when, if Facebook decides to ban me, I need to be able to do that. I couldn't figure out how to download the Facebook Live without getting expensive software. What did I do? I Googled it. And the funny thing is, I got the information from a young African brother, who I've never met, probably will never meet, on how to download your Facebook Live videos without any software, without any rule breaking, totally. So I now have a copy of all the Facebook Lives I have. Yep. And the reality of the matter is, if we don't start to just ask questions, I had 4 people on this Zoom today who, in their own right, I'm going to call them experts in what they do. And if you go away from today's conversation and, you've been in the chat and you've give us a couple of 100 likes, and, I think we've had our highest amount of viewers today, and I'm grateful for that. But if you go away and you haven't written down Toyin's name, if you haven't written down Asari's, Cheryl, Dean, if you haven't written them down and then contact them on Monday, probably you've wasted your time. That's just me. Because when we're trying to answer the question of why we are still not doing anything, it's because we're not acting on the knowledge we have. Yeah.
Paul, can I just add one thing very quickly?
Of course you can, sir.
One thing I want to mention is, it's funny what Toyin said. As a young person, many of us went through the same journey. And I was one of those people that said, oh, Martin Luther King, waste of time. And then I had to travel to work by tube for a while. I've never traveled to work in central London before. I got a job and I was traveling, and I thought, you know what? Let me find a book that's not too large I can read on the train. And I picked up this little book that I had for years called Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King. And when I finished reading that, I said, this man was serious. This is a man we got to know. And I would still recommend reading that book now, Why We Can't Wait. It's a very good read of why we can't wait and how to organize. But the other thing I wanted to say is, anybody who's a business owner, sack your accountant, right? Unless they're proactive, in the last 8 weeks, if you haven't heard from them, they're definitely a waste of time. Because if in the last 8 weeks, your accountant hasn't contacted you to tell you what's available, you're with the wrong person. And I can introduce you to accountants who are good, bookkeepers who are good. I've got a brother who's a bookkeeper. He's teaching me how to use QuickBooks, so I can put all my stuff on QuickBooks. I've got a brother who's got a trading account. The brother is doing 10 grand a month. Well, he's probably more than that now. 10 grand a month passive income. He's a trader. He teaches. He's got an office in Docklands. A brother from Ghana lives here, and he teaches people how to trade. I only stopped mine because I just haven't found the time to do it. So I thought, well, I'm not doing anything with it, but I need to go back on there. There's loads of people who are trading online and making good money. But the thing is, the danger is, don't go and just do it and blow all your money. Get somebody like him who can teach you how to do it properly and professionally. But the thing is, there's so many people we can introduce. I've got 3,000 people on my phone. If people want an introduction to somebody, tell me who they want an introduction to. I'll try and get them that introduction.
And that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to follow up on something that you mentioned about the BNI, the whole principle of it, because I know this is something that Dean has been doing, yeah, whether informally or not. But I do think there's some space for us to formalize that. And I'm not going to even pretend that I'm not doing this from a selfish point of view. Yeah, because I'm going to be straight. I need to take my company to the next level. Yep. Now that I know for sure that only me got my back, and the few who are looking in the same direction. Ladies and gentlemen, look, it's been a great day. Cheryl, last word. I'm giving you a last word, even though you had your last word.
Well, just quickly, I'd say sorry. That whole trading thing you're talking about, me and my sons were talking about exactly the same thing. So I do want that contact, or make that happen more than me, because it's like I'm trying to bring them up to a level now where they're just doing their own thing and they can run off and do what they got to do. For me, last word is just really, you guys have already said it. Making sure, just keep active, people. Don't, I'll be honest with you, I've taken this time, the last 8 weeks, to do almost zero. And I've really enjoyed it. I've actually rested. I've sat back and kicked back and watched Netflix. I'm being genuinely honest. I've done nothing. Well, I've read a couple of files, but realistically, and it's been the first time, I think, in all my adult life, I've been able to sit down and just chill and actually reflect and take some time out of meditation for me, enjoy Prosecco without having to rush and running to get up in the morning. Just chill. And I think sometimes we forget, we're so busy trying to be busy that we're not taking that time for ourselves. And I would say that would be really my word, is to make sure that you're taking that time out for self, meditate, put some candles out and chillax. Dean, I know you're a fast talker like me and you're always on the move. Sit down. Do you understand? I think we all need to sit and just cool off. I'm now bored of chilling, so I'm going to get back onto my next phase and get our theatre stuff up and running. But that's just for me, and I'll take my time with that. I'm in no hurry to get back out into the wide world, to be honest with you, because being at home, it has been great. It is good that I can take my time and just be in my living room and dig out my books. And, there's no rush. If you are getting the extra money from government, etc., so you're okay. Stop stressing yourselves, because one thing that everyone's dying, you can fall out of a plane, they say you died from COVID, when sometimes dying of heart attacks, brain tumors, mental health problems. Right now, if you've got mental health and you go to the hospital, they may section you. They have that power. So, and a lot of it comes from because people are stressed the hell out. If you need help for it, go pick up the phone. Most people have my number or whoever's number out there. Ask for the help and make sure you get that support and make sure you have that time for self. So that will probably be my next. Forget everything else for maybe a day and just focus on self.
Good. Lady and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been my great pleasure. Good. And, you know, we're going to do another show next week, Sunday. I don't yet know who the guests are, and I don't know what the topics are. I think, you know, this week has taught me that having a topic in mind is a good thing, but it may not necessarily work out the way you plan because of what happens during the week. Everybody in Facebook, thank you so much. I'll be posting the YouTube link to this video, which you can share to your friends from the People Talk channel on YouTube. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.